really excited. I think we have a great discussion today. Joining me is David Mitchell from Mercer. And so what you're going to see today is some great research and some great data and intelligence that we're going to share with you on different trends in the talent marketplace. So to get started, we'll just do a quick introduction. As I said, I'm Andrea Shah. I'm the head of talent strategy and transformation at Eightfold. I joined Eightfold about 2 years ago. Prior to that, I had a 25-year career at American Express, where I worked across many different business units, but ended up in human resources and really led a lot of transformation there, including the implementation of Eightfold. So I spend my time these days talking to talent leaders about how skills AI has a big impact on their talent strategies. So looking forward to sharing more with you today. And I'll let David introduce himself too.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon. Looking forward to sharing with everybody today. David Mitchell, I'm part of Mercer's Future of Work practice, a fun place to be sitting these days with so much disruption and innovation around things like ChatGPT. We'll certainly go into AI today, and just all the innovations around things like talent marketplaces and the types of great work that Eightfold does. So we'll get that much deeper. Prior to Mercer, I was the Chief Human Resource Officer in a large academic medical center healthcare organization, also many years in the technology space. And so I've appreciated seeing technology innovation, consulting innovation, and then being in-house, actually getting to put a lot of these practices into effect. And so I'll really try today not just to be conceptual, but talk about how does this look in real life, so that as all of you are going out and putting this into place in your organizations, we'll really try to give some good practical tips and ideas today, and look forward to the dialogue with you.
Yeah, innovation seems to be the word of the moment for sure. So let's get started. We're going to talk a little bit about skills, a lot about skills at the core, and how that really unleashes kind of work design in the current day, given all the trends that are happening. So I think we just went through a bit on our introductions, a little bit about our agenda, and we'll just go ahead and dive right in. So I'm going to get started, just set the stage a little bit. We talked about transformation and innovation. I thought one of the things that would be helpful for this audience to see is what's happening in this broad transformational trend related to digital trends, right? I think most companies across most industries are facing these trends, and thought it'd be helpful to highlight some actual trends that we're seeing in our data. And I think a lot of this makes a lot of sense, but it's always great to step back and spend a moment kind of reflecting on this. So what you see here are just kind of these trends that are happening, right, related to cloud computing, mobile first, AI and big data, very central. I think we're going to deep dive into that. Dave's going to deep dive into that a little bit today about ChatGPT. We're going to talk about, the other trends related to edge computing, Internet of all things, cybersecurity, and even virtual and augmented reality. These are some of the big digital trends that we're seeing. And here, what you can see with each of them, you can see kind of the areas and functions that they're impacting, which is everything really. And you can see the big jobs that are emerging, right? If you look at cloud computing, what you're seeing here is things like cloud engineers. We all, I think, are very aware of kind of that as a rising role. If you look at AI and big data, it's data engineers, data scientists, and analytics experts are some of the big trends that I think anybody that's a talent leader is seeing huge demand for in the marketplace. So just giving a highlight overall on these trends, how they're affecting roles and how roles are emerging with these trends. And I think for most people, we can see that these are some of the most competitive roles to hire for. On the next page, I think just another level in, what you'll see is these trends and how they relate to skills, right? And it's actually when you take a look at the skills associated with roles and even traditional roles, how fast skills are changing, that's where you're going to see some of the most dramatic changes. And so here we've captured 4 of those trends related to AI and big data, cloud computing, Internet of all things, and cybersecurity. And you can see the use cases. There's some of the most critical use cases that drive everything, right? Your customer experience, your revenue growth, your cost efficiency, and even speed of efficiency, right? all those things are impacted by these types of functionalities. And you can see the different types of roles that really, the different types of skills that really are in high demand now in each of these areas. One of the things we took a look at is what is the prevalence of these skills in the marketplace? And what you can see is while these are really fast growing skills, the prevalence of these skills within organizations is still on the low side. Most of them are in the red space, and I think cloud computing is the one area that's moved into yellow. I think just out of pure necessity, right, with regards to kind of storing data. So there's a lot of trends here, really important trends I just wanted to highlight as an overview on kind of what's happening with regards to skills, picking up the trend specifically on digital skills and roles, because that's where we're seeing some of the greatest change. So let's go ahead and jump into our poll for a second, as I've just covered that. We'd love to hear from the audience a little bit about which digital trends do you believe will have the most significant impact on your organization in the next 5 years? So you see the options here, A, B, C, and D. A being artificial intelligence and machine learning, B, remote and flexible work arrangements, C, employee experience and engagement platforms, and D, big data and analytics for HR decision-making. Great, let's look at these results. Okay. Great. I think we still have a couple answers coming in. Really interesting. So leading the way by a large majority, still getting a few answers coming in. I'll wait one more minute because really I think this is going to be interesting to hear our audience's perspective here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read these results, but what I'm seeing here is the largest grouping here in terms of the trend they'll have the greatest impact on the organization in the next 5 years is artificial intelligence and machine learning, currently at 45% of the response. Next, followed by big data and analytics for HR decision-making at 21%, followed by remote and flexible work arrangements, which is 19%, and employee experience and engagement platforms at 16%. So really interesting insights to see. And still seeing votes coming in, which is great, but we're staying pretty consistent with these results. David, any thoughts you have on kind of what you're seeing here in terms of the responses from the audience?
Well, I guess I'm just feeling good that our next slide starts out with the words AI. So we anticipated the audience well, and we'll have a good next couple minutes of content for folks. But
awesome.
It is the topic on top of everyone's mind, and so we'll definitely roll up our sleeves and go deep there today.
Okay. So let's go ahead and we'll proceed on, and perfect segue.
It is. Thank you, everyone, for answering correctly. I didn't have an alternative slide if you did not. So in any case, as I said, I mean, the world, November 30th last year was when OpenAI released their ChatGPT-4 model. And it really is almost like BC and AD in the world of technology and work, because so much is going to change. I'll show you some data in a minute around just how much we think some of these new generative AI type of tools are going to change things. And I can tell you it's not a moment too soon, because the way we've set up the slide is how are we solving a problem? And going back to about the year 2000, I'll show you some data on this in a minute as well. The world's found itself in kind of this funny workforce productivity problem. You know, one would think that since the late 90s, when internet came out, we should all be like massively more productive. And in fact, the data shows that workforce productivity has fallen over the years. And this is really becoming a problem, whether it be in China, in the US, and America, in Europe, where costs are going up. We all know labor is getting more expensive. It's been an inflationary period, but we're not getting productive kind of at the same rates of growth that are getting more expensive. And so the hope really is that organizations, of course, one reason we look at skills is how to make people better utilized and more value added. What are the skills that we need in the future? Where's our workforce today? How can we invest in those and build a more effective, productive workforce? AI just comes on top of that and says both how do we have the right skills for the future and how do we go into the nuts and bolts, the sausage making of each of our jobs and start incorporating this not as replacing the human worker, but augmenting us with this additional knowledge and really productivity tools to get more productive. And so that's going to be the focus today, is kind of how do you supercharge your skills journey with things like AI and work redesign. So we can jump onto the next slide here. As we look at the little guy here, he's probably 15, 16 years from perhaps getting his first job. For a lot of us, the changes are going to come quite a bit quicker. Two of the questions a minute ago, one was around AI, the other was around flex and alternative work models as two of the four options. Both are changing so quickly. So first, just looking at some of the data out there right now, there's this idea that 8 in every 10 job, or I should use my elementary school math, 4 out of every 5 jobs will be affected in some way by generative AI. So essentially means nearly every one of us on this call, something not 12 years from now, something in the next 12 months is going to be changing around our positions. And for about 20% of jobs, 19%, more than half of what we do throughout the day will be significantly affected, especially anybody who's in, say, a computer programming job, an accounting job, a nursing job, for example. These are ones that are going to be really, really disrupted around it. So key questions are our organizations, are we as often HR leaders and HR professionals ready? And then it's not just that the technology parts of our job and augmenting parts of technology coming in. It's also, we have this huge new, many ways of working with one another. Remote working, hybrid working, Zoom isn't necessarily new, but COVID, again, supercharged that and really opened the door on whether I be working from home, whether it be working from hybrid, whether it be job sharing, ideas of gig work. And of course, as you see new generations like the Zoomer generation coming in, have a very different expectation of work. And so you just have these two very disruptive factors of many new ways of flexibly, creatively working, supercharged with new technologies that change in kind of the productivity calculation. And that's what's going to be so disruptive to us. And so we'll get some practical ideas in a second, but it's important to start out with just how quickly this is coming and how big it will be. Now, if we jump to the next slide, technology changing work is certainly not a new thing, all the way going back to, say, the 1950s, where we start doing a lot of the factory automation and, those first room size IBM super big computers are coming into play, all the way through digital interaction technologies in the 80s, 90s, up to new digital enabled business models. I mean, a business like Uber, I was happy taking an Uber this morning, couldn't have existed 10 years ago. This is a whole new class of transportation of jobs that have been enabled by technology, bringing in some of this flexibility to work. And so as we've gone through each of these kind of technology transformations, the way we've been able to work has certainly changed, from new work to gig economy to flex work, but also the impact on workers, bringing more people often into the workforce in more meaningful ways. Ideally, technology isn't replacing us. It's giving more time to do what matters to us, to lean into those skills that make us most productive and to find that meaningfulness. And that's what we really believe, and I'll show some examples as we go through. So we believe generative AI is going to come as a amplified, augmenting our intelligence, and ideally making us even more productive and just finding enjoyment out of what we do. And that's what we really see in the next slide. I talked a minute ago about how we're seeing, all of our jobs, four to about 5 jobs will change, but 20% jobs, huge amounts will change. The fun way to think about work for me is kind of in these stacked bar graphs here. So think of most of us today. I'm a consultant, so there's an expertise part of my job. Talks like this, or going to clients and sharing what I've learned from 25, 26 years of just working and developing skills. There's the relational part of work, whether we have selling parts of our job, serving customers, externally or internally, but the things we have to do one-to-one as humans or with groups. And then all of us just have the transactional stuff. If I'm a nurse, I'm in the Epic system doing billing and medical records coding. If I'm, in an accounting job, it's probably setting up spreadsheets in a certain way. I'm sure everybody on this call has expense reports and travel arrangements. Large parts of our day and many jobs we look at when we break them down into hours, 30, 40% of our time can be that transactional stuff. So first, the good news, the people who are really studying where is AI going to hit the most, it's that big light green transactional bit. The sense is that's going to really just start to go down quite a bit, which one gives all of us significantly more time in our day, really just in the next 3 to 4 years as this starts taking hold across our businesses, more time in our day to lean into the expertise parts of our job, which is great. That's what we spend all our time developing, to the relational parts of our job, which is often what brings many of us meaningfulness and enjoyment, and take that transactional piece. Sometimes people say, is AI going to replace us? Is it me or Chat GPT? I do think for the transactional work, the experts here say that is what's going to get substituted. Doing a lot of the accounting and what does our taxes do? And if I'm a doctor, how do I make sure I get the right medical code to get the insurance billing correct? AI is wonderful at doing that kind of thing. And that really will be RPA, means robotic process automation or AI there. For the relational and expertise part, though, this is the augmentation. This is where I'm trying to come up with a presentation or a client email, or to do a performance review for a staff member, or look at screening a large number of applications if I'm in talent acquisition. And here's where it can come in and be doing summarizing, doing content creation, all the kind of wonderful things that's starting to come there on the augmentation side. And so I'll give some more examples as we go, but that's really how work is going to be changing. And so we can start just seeing that if skills have always been important, and I don't mean the transactional skills like data entry will certainly go down as an important skill. It's the skills around being able to have empathy, to understand a client's need, or if I'm doing HR, doing maybe leadership development. Those kind of skills are just going to rocket ship up in importance going forward. The expertise and relational parts of our job is what we're going to all be leaning into. So to me, that's good news. And if we go ahead and just jump to the next one, it's not just technology making our kind of value-added skills more important and giving us more time in our day to do those. It's also giving us, as employers, much more flexible ways to think about getting the work done. I mean, we've all long known that the typical 9-to-5 job is kind of just going away right now. A lot of the surveys that we do here at Mercer with CEOs, or people are saying it's like 60-65% of CEOs are saying they expect the majority of their work by the year 2030 to be open, not just to full-time, but to these different part-time, gig, contractor, shared jobs type of arrangements. One that recognizes the huge retirement boom that's coming, but also that recognizes some of the younger folks coming into the workforce having just very different expectations around work. So this idea of employees in flexible roles, flowing to where they're needed, enabled by this kind of neat technology that's coming out. And of course, to do any kind of that flow, skills become the common language that allows that. It's not just a job description sitting in a cost center in a 1.0 FT kind of job, but it's being able to have, project management skills. And perhaps I picked up some IT project management expertise, but I've also picked up some finance project management expertise and maybe some HR project expertise. So I now have that unique ability to flow around in my organization based on those skills. And so those are just a few of the ways that we really see technology and things like AI changing work, these new work arrangements. And so where it's really going, if we jump onto the next slide there, is to idea of talent marketplaces. If you've been on prior HCI calls or calls with Eightfold, we've talked quite a bit about this idea of talent marketplace. So much of the world is going in this direction right now, where we're looking at what is that right skilled talent, that project manager who's really good at complex, hairy projects, and maybe it's an IT space or finance space. And our organization is starting up a new initiative right now that needs that person, maybe in a different country, a different city, a different business unit that they sit in. Maybe we need to augment it a bit of time with a real special kind of expertise, maybe on a particular technology or new service area. And the whole idea as we do the fun little build here on the next slide is just seeing we're going to be able to take our individuals, take their skill sets, take those tasks, and just do these very flexible mashups. Some organizations call them tiger teams. So I have a big new initiative I'm starting this year. I'm going to grab a finance person, an IT person, an HR person, a salesperson. We're all going to come together for 6-7 months around a goal, get it started up, and then that thing explodes and we all go off to the next thing. But we're all, coming back to our core issue, which is we're just not productive enough the last really 2 decades. It is that combination of more relational time, more expertise time, augmented with the AI types of tools, with then the agility to flow where that work is and up our utilization with these kind of talent marketplaces. So a few things just on how a lot of this may kind of feel, I don't know, very futuristic to some. Others will say I'm already doing this. Some of the organizations are, some in the leaders here. But let's talk in the next slide a bit just around how mindsets change. Because for some, this can be really uncomfortable. Frankly, for people managers, for HR managers who are often used to, needing to kind of control where's the head count in our workforce planning, that part of it can be very uncomfortable. So what's changing? Historically, of course, we've had people unemployed. An employer with a number, it's a 1.0 position, maybe in some cases a 0.5 FTE position. I'm in a single job, IT project manager, that has a cost center to it. I've had to maybe fight to get that headcount this year. I don't want to give up that headcount. But I've got it in place and I have a linear career path, maybe going up from a junior IT PM to a middle level IT PM to a senior IT PM. And I have maybe some technology, project management software, for example, to go along with that. So where things are really changing now and where HR professionals and people managers will be really challenged with their mind shift changes is this idea. I certainly have my internal talent, but they may not be in my department. They may not even be in my business unit. In some cases, they may not even be in my city or my country. They're just in my company somewhere. So I have internal talent. And of course, there's other times where I don't need to go out and hire that 1.0 FTE. I just need a little bit of external talent. How can I go look for this kind of talent? I also have my jobs, but I also have work tasks in particular projects. Maybe a time-bound one. This is an FY23 project, for example, and have a range of different kind of experiences and skills that are required for that. For those of you that might be in the biopharmaceutical space, I often hear this as an example of 7-8 years ago in the pharmacy space. It takes a long time it used to take a long time to bring new drugs to market. You have to, do clinical 1, 2, 3, 4 trials and FDA approval in this country and other country, their own FDA versions. It takes 7-8 years, and that gives you plenty of time to build a sales organization, build a research organization, build a regulatory organization. Most biopharmas now are doing 8 drug releases a year. And just kind of for everybody, business is ramping up that way. So I need to know who has heart drug expertise, Japanese regulatory experience in 3 months, but 7 months from now, the focus is going to be doing the release over in France. So how can I build that kind of agility in my workforce to match that kind of agility that's happening in so many of our businesses? Certainly pharmaceutical is just indicative of many of the ways all of our industries are changing right now. So that's a lot of the concept. I'm going to share one more slide. Andre will come back and ground us again, and then we're going to really go into an issue of how do we start making this practical. We've talked a few things over the last 10, 15 minutes here around thinking about how what we do each day is going to change, that transactional stuff going away, how we're going to then become even more agile with bringing skills into it and moving where we need to. But the hope would be, and this is the huge challenge for the C-suite executives, the folks that make the big money in our companies right now, is this going to finally be the solution to our productivity conundrum? Of course, people still want their 3%, 4%, 5% merit increases this year. Inflation is still coming down, but still quite high in this country. So costs are going up. But can we finally start, HR going to our business leaders saying, we think we have a really innovative idea here from you of combining both the promise of AI technology and how that makes us more productive in our jobs, combined with skills-based talent marketplaces that push up our utilization and ideally not just do good for the business, bring some more meaningfulness to all of us to finally get at this productivity conundrum we've had forever. And I think if we can't get this, this really puts HR, we've long been hopefully the hero seat, but really up there in the hero seat. So a last slide there before I pass it back to Andrea. the big questions now, based on everything we've talked about for the last few minutes, is going around this clock here. These, in my opinion, and I know I have my own favorite slides. To me, I think this is, for at least my section, the most important one here. So if you've been multitasking the last 10 minutes, stay with me for just 30 seconds here. But all those things we've talked about give us now the opportunity as HR leaders to go to our business unit leaders, go to our people managers, our C-suite executives, and really start having these conversations around, in our job, how do we start looking at some of these automation options of substitution, augmentation, transformation, some of that stuff over there, like the 2-3 o'clock. How can we additionally look at some alternative work arrangements so that those who are maybe available to do part-time, they're not there for full-time, I can get in and get their skills, their expertise for that amount of time. In this new augmented world going forward, really, how does that change kind of our algorithms on what are the most important skills in our organization? And the typical thing of what we need 3 years from now, who do we have today in our whole, typical buy, build partner? How do we get to that right skill set? And then the last one is, how do we, down at 6 o'clock there, how do we now best organize our work? Organize it to get the very best out of technology, get the very best out of people, and build those skills-based, meaningful careers going forward. So as we transition, I think we have one more, or a second poll question now that we'll put up here for y'all. So this one being, how important do you believe it is for organizations to strike the right balance between human skills and technology to drive success in modern work design? And we'll see the options come up here for y'all in a moment.
Okay. So it looks like we're getting some pretty consistent results as the responses are coming in. Overwhelmingly, the responses are that it is extremely important, and find the right synergy is key to thrive. So striking that balance between human skills and technology to drive success in the organization.
Now we know what everybody's budgeting for next year. Andrew, we should go into AI sales.
Yeah. But David, I really agree with your last point. This is such an amazing opportunity for HR leaders to inform the organization about these alternatives, these solutions, and these ways to really kind of manage for talent to deliver on business results. I agree with you. I think HR is put into this great seat to make a big difference for driving business and business results. And I think it's an exciting time for us. It's a little crazy, though. I mean, obviously, it's been a very transformative, very volatile few years, but it's also very exciting for those who are up to kind of really championing these opportunities for their organization. Okay, so let's keep going for a second. So now so we've just talked a lot about ChatGPT. We talked about dramatic changes that are happening to jobs in the workforce. So the big question I think that ends up being on people's mind is like, how do I equip my organization to be ready for this? And how do I make sure we're agile so that we can be ready to either keep up with these trends or stay ahead of the trends, right? As you can see, these trends are going to drive a lot of business results and success and efficiencies and customer engagement. So really important. I think what I want to share a little bit with you now is some of the intelligence that comes that Eightfold brings to our customers, right? We have about half the world's workforce worth of data on skills and skill trends. We're able to bring that intelligence and kind of integrate it into kind of the workflow of talent. And I want to share with you some of those insights now, and you can see kind of the impact of that and how you're able to take those insights and make some great decisions or enable some great experiences for your employees. So on this page, what you'll see, here's a specific example. I'm taking one of the digital rising roles, which is a data scientist. And what we can see, and this is real data, what we can see are on the first column, these are the top skills that we're seeing in the marketplace in terms of the most common skills for a data scientist. In addition to these skills, what we can also see is, are these skills rising? Are they declining? Or are they stable skills? So if you look at a data scientist here, if you look at these top skills, you'll see 3 that are rising: Python, Tableau, and machine learning are some of the common rising skills. You also see a few that are stable, and also 3 that are declining amongst these most prevalent skills. And this type of insight is really valuable. We see a lot of our customers using this information to talk to their leaders, their business leaders, about, like, what does this mean for us? Are these skills that we require for our jobs? Should we require them? And if you look at the second column, this is actually one that generates a lot of conversation, right? The second column is really about the fastest rising skills for data scientists. So we're able to see, for example, over the past 10 years, which are some of the fastest rising skills. The majority of these are really rising at a clip of over 4 times the rate of where they were earlier. And so you can see they're really fast growing skills. And this is great because it allows you to see as a leader and your business leaders, like, are these skills that are critical for us? Have we included them in terms of the skills that we want to require for our roles? That means, are we building the right skills for this role based on what the marketplace is telling us? Right. So really valuable information to have as you're thinking about skills for different roles in your company. This is now looking at, again, at a data scientist. And obviously, as you can see, over the past 10 years, the role is growing in prevalence very quickly to be a highly prevalent role. And then if you look at the skill trends within the role, I think this is really interesting. If you take a look at 10 years ago, the rising skills, there's literally no overlap with the current rising skills. So a lot of different tools, practices, and approaches that are required for data scientists. And you can see the slope of the lines beneath each of those. You can actually see that these skills are changing at a 3 to 5 year clip. Right. And so that's what's really important. You want to understand kind of what's happening, because you don't want to fall behind. You don't want your competitors to be growing these skills that are really vital, right, to be successful for a data scientist, and to be lagging in terms of the skills that you're hiring for, and potentially behind, right, in building those skills in your organizations, because these are important skills. Looking at the next page, I just want to share with you a little bit about kind of when you have this intelligence as a talent leader, what you're able to see is what are some declining roles and what are some rising roles, right? And declining roles, here is an example based on actual data that we see, are systems analyst roles. When you look at future roles, cloud engineer roles, as we talked about earlier, is a fast rising role. What we're able to see with the intelligence is these 2 roles have really high overlap of their skills. The green boxes are direct overlap, the yellow boxes are related overlap. So for an HR leader or for a business leader, this is great to see, because this gives you the ability to understand, where can I upskill in my organization, right? Who has a heavy overlap with the skills and has the ability to pick up these new skills readily to be able to move into these future roles. And I love this because it's a win-win. Right? It's a win for the organization because you're building the skills that are critical to your business success, but it's also a win for your employees because they're building skills that are going to be relevant for the future. So I really love this scenario of some of the insights, intelligence that you can get through Skills AI. The next page is same thing, slightly different view. This is from an employee's perspective. So if I'm that systems administrator, I could actually see I have heavy overlap with 3 different types of roles: a cloud engineer role, business systems consultant role, and a DevOps engineer role. And I can see these are very different pathways that I can take. And what skills do I want to build in these pathways? So if I want to move down the path of a cloud engineer, you can see there's a lot around agile methodologies, Java and Python. So there's, programming language that's important. And then the middle pathway is very different. If process improvement, business analysis, and strategic planning is important to me as areas I'd love to learn, I can choose a very different pathway. And both of those pathways have heavy overlap with skills I already have. So this is really I think this is really powerful from the perspective of empowering your employees. We're seeing that as one of the biggest drivers for success of employee engagement and also for upskilling. And the last slide I want to share with you, which I really love, is really, I think, Dave, you talked a little bit about, potential and understanding potential in your organization. This is something that Eightfold has done scientifically with the data that we have. So we have such a depth of data, as I said, with half the world's workforce worth of data, we can actually see what skills individuals have before they learn another skill successfully. So we see kind of the movement of individuals in their careers and what are the common pathways and what skills are usually picked up when somebody has a base of skills. And so we call these adjacent skills. And so if you look in this page, you can see in the dark boxes are some of the common high demand skills out there. And the right of that are what we've identified as adjacent skills. And I'll use the example of Python, where if you've got experience with Java, R, or C++, your ability to learn Python is highly likely. As a matter of fact, since Python we're seeing that as a rising programming skill, the chances are you might already have a foot in the door in terms of learning Python. And you can see the same for the others. If you look at agile methodologies, Scrum, user-centered design. Some of these skills are basically predictors that you can acquire agile methodologies skills pretty readily. The power of this, if you look at the gold box on the right, is that you're able to increase your pool of candidates, whether you're looking internally or externally, pretty substantially, right? Anywhere from, I think it's 3 times for Python, if you consider these adjacent skills, up to 12 times for financial modeling. And so the power of this is, you can actually look at your workforce and understand what skills you have that are adjacent skills and what's your likelihood of being able to upskilling for some of the skills in the dark box, right? Which are some of the most competitive skills, right? They're really tough to find in the marketplace. And so this is really powerful from the skills intelligence perspective. And we kind of weave this into the talent process, whether you're talking about talent acquisition or you're talking about internal mobility. So employees and talent leaders can see this, and even recruiters can see it in talent acquisition to help really grow quality candidate pools. So I just want to share that on, tools and how AI plays a role in helping you really become agile and building the critical skills that you need. So let's jump to our next poll. How prepared do you feel to approach modern work design practices and adapt to the changing landscape of work? And if you want to show the options here, A, not prepared at all, B, slightly prepared, C, moderately prepared, D, very prepared, and E, extremely prepared.
Andrew, while people answer that, there was a question from one of our participants there about how are you measuring the speed of skill gain? Is the number of people gaining the skills per time period, something else?
Yeah, so we're measuring the speed by the prevalence of the skill. So how prevalent is that skill for the role? In the example I shared with you is how prevalent is that skill for a particular role, and has the relative prevalence of that skill grown over time? I think that's kind of the powerful way we've been able to identify, the rising or declining skill trends.
Perfect.
Okay. Great. So here, what I'm seeing, the strongest category of response is moderately prepared. And I see slightly prepared shifting up and down as the second category, followed by very prepared, and then 6% in not prepared at all, and 3% in extremely prepared. That's exciting to see. We sound like we've got some real transformation innovators in our audience. Great.
Perfect.
Okay. We'll just continue on.
Yeah, so hopefully after this last about 10-minute or so section, everybody can at least bump up from one of those levels to a bit prepared to moderate to high, because I really want to take this time where, Andrew's really laid out for us what are the concept of skills that are rising in importance, and how do those fit into jobs. We looked at like the sysadmin and the DevOps type of managers. So assuming in the future, as we find those people, develop in those people those critical skills, how do we now really design those jobs to get one, maximum productivity out of them, good for the business, as well as also just really build in maximum sustainability for them, so that they're fine, just have the resilience and the meaningfulness in the job. And that is where this last piece, and we'll just be kind of hopefully very practical step by step through this idea of modern work redesign comes into place. So let's jump forward here. It's going to be a simple set of 4 rules. It can get a bit more complicated if you're doing this in real life. For example, I had the pleasure of, over the last 7 months, in one case, working with a large US specialty retailer where they wanted to reimagine the role of the in-store sales associate, or in a very different environment, a hospital system that wanted to reimagine the role of the registered nurse. In a lot of our sectors, especially places where we just face really endemic talent shortages. I think with the latest June numbers, there were still about 4.5 million more job openings in this country than there are people looking for jobs. Having both the right skills and just being able to get a bit more capacity in the day really becomes critical in a lot of our talent constrained places. So we're going to look at an approach that does 2 things. One, we're going to start with the work, not just that existing job description for a sysadmin or DevOps. But if I look in the 20-80-hour work year or the 168-hour work month, how much time percentage-wise are they spending on X task? 10% there, 15% on this other one, 5% there. But really start with the work itself, and thinking about what is the time allocation of the job. What are the skills related to each one of those particular tasks, not the overall job, but the skill for those individual, often for most of us, 20 to 30 tasks that we're doing in the course of our daily jobs. And once we've done that, gotten broken down and looked at the time allocation, essentially doing a time study, we're going to go through each and every single one of those tasks. Let's take that in-store sales associate who maybe spends part of their time back in the warehouse looking for product, or organizing the shipment that came in with a delivery truck this morning. Maybe a part in the front of the store, straightening up things, making sure all shelves look nice and all the racks are full. Certainly a part of the time answering shopper questions, or at the cash register, doing point of sale checkout kind of things. And let's really think for each one of those tasks, which have very different skills associated with them, what is that optimal combination of human, that often has to do with expertise and relational parts, versus what can be automated. That's often a big part of that transactional piece. How can we automate as much of that part of the job as possible? Once you've really got that optimal combination of each task between humans and machines, then really start having that discussion of what are all the different ways we could fill that job. To share the example of one neat nursing organization I saw recently, one that we hear very often from frontline workers, those who are, say, working an 8 or 12-hour shift and blue-collar positions, is I want more flexibility in my job. Well, it's interesting to think about skills. If I think about an RN, for example, registered nurse, well, that job requires that particular skill or certification. But there's also jobs like telehealth or patient navigator that require that similar skill set. And wouldn't it be interesting, you start to see hospitals doing this, saying, here are 2 totally different FTE positions, different cost centers. What would it look like if I did 3 days a week in an inpatient hospital or in an outpatient clinic, 2 days a week working from home in a patient navigator telehealth role? It's the same core job, the same core skill set, nursing. And maybe doing the patient navigator, I have to be leaning into maybe some of my telehealth kind of things and communication type of issues. So I need to up my skills there. But in places that look at both optimizing the work as well as these different work arrangements, in nursing, for example, You see turnover go down 80, 90% compared to their cohort. You see burnout go down 60, 70% compared to, say, the rest of the organization. Just to expand that across to warehousing, to manufacturing types of jobs. There's all sorts of very clever ways we can be getting into this, considering the full array of human work engagements. And then the last one is that agility piece. Once we know what those core certifications or skill sets are that I can move them around in the organization, that's what really gives me that flexibility to both get the most out of people from an organizational point of view, as to really be giving people a neat chance as well to be expanding themselves, having those very interesting type of days. So those are the 4 rules. Let me just show you maybe one more slide that builds on this a bit more. What does this look like? And let's maybe take like that DevOps or that sysadmin that Andrew was talking about a minute ago. So we said the first thing we're going to do is take that DevOps job and just break it down. Maybe they do their 25, 30 things each day or each month as part of that job. And I'm going to be thinking about of each of those 25, 30 tasks. What are repetitive or versus variable? What are independent done just by myself versus I need to be working with others, internal or external folks? What's the physical part of the job? So I'm actually doing something with my hands, tactile, versus kind of what's up here in my head, the mental side of the jobs. And really be asking the question, if I was to improve not the overall job, but every single task in that job, maybe the project managing part of DevOps, the coding part of DevOps, the maybe strategizing, conceptualizing part of DevOps, troubleshooting, whatever it might be, what would that look like? Would that look like making fewer mistakes? Would it look like it doing things more consistently? Would it look things like incrementally improving productivity? Is a little AI tool? Maybe I can summarize emails quicker that way, or ask it to read documentation from 10 different vendors and summarize in 2 paragraphs for me what I need to know. Or is there a transformational performance opportunity? So it's getting down to that task level and really asking how can we optimize it, which gets us to the next stage there on the next build. Now we really are saying, let's automate that work, optimize it. Where are we bringing technology into the job, whether it be a generative AI tool like Bard, Google, or ChatGPT, or any of the other many tools that are coming onto the market right now. Are there any other social or cognitive automation kind of tools? Even the robots. I do quite a bit of work in healthcare, and it's not at all uncommon now to see one of those white little robots with a container that opens up in front of it to go take the blood work and the other lab work. So you don't actually have to have a human walking around the halls. A robot does it. One system worked with lately, for them, that was worth $30 million in savings just by moving from a human to a robot doing that kind of thing. And I promise no human missed having to walk blood samples down to the lab. If we go to the next one on it, it's then really thinking about all these different opportunities, both for automation, the process automation, cognitive automation. This is things like having an iPad going around kind of triggering me. So as I hear an issue coming in, this is great for customer service people. Here's the issue that presented. It's starting to give to me different scripts, different ideas of where to go based on what's coming in. So kind of speeds me up and gives a much more standardized approach. Some of the social robotics, that's the robot moving around. Or can we be doing that last piece around substituting the work? Is there maybe a lower cost person in the organization that can do it, or a skill set that's more widely available in the marketplace? I can push that down to some of my real special people who have that Python skill set. They can spend most of their days doing that piece. And then finally, there is that reskilling pathway. For me, somehow 40% has become the magic number. So whether we're looking at the retail store associated with the future job, it's about 40% of that role that can typically be automated or redistributed. Whether it be a nursing job, so about 40% of that job. That often is the medical records and coding part that can be automated. For many of us in professional services, it's a lot of the coming up with emails and summarizing information in about 40% of our time. And so often that's creating, my 60% of the day, I want to expand that to 100. What are those core skill sets where I can really lean into the future and what we call our reconstructed job? So kind of our superpower job, and have the reskilling going into that. So as we really come up kind of on the end of this discussion, I'll just go on to 1 or 2 last slides that say a bit more on this. So just to walk us through one last time as a real quick summary, we're looking at the time allocation of the job, break it down. So 20% of time, in this case, this person's reviewing contracts, and 20% for this person based on their overall salary, $17,000. We're looking at the skill set for this distribution agent. In this case, it was dispatching was a particular skill that went in it. We're going from there to the next step, which is where we're looking at all the different ways that that job could be automated on the next slide there. There it goes. Whether it be the automation things at the top or the redistribution at the bottom, all the many different ways from job mashups to shared jobs to gig jobs to full-time jobs for moving around. And then the very last piece I'm looking at here is this one on this idea of once I've got that optimal combination of people and humans, now how do I make sure I am having that right mix of the contractors, the full times, the lower cost, higher skilled or higher skills availability folks. Maybe I have to centralize some things, in some cases even outsource or nearshore, offshore parts of that position. And the very last piece, once I've done all of those things, is come back to my skills where we started today in that reconfigured job, the one where we got rid of all that transactional stuff we talked about 40 minutes ago, expanded the time and expertise and relational things. What are the skills we're really going to lean into in those optimized, reconstructed jobs of the future that we talked about solving that productivity conundrum? That's going to get us there, this mashup of work redesign plus agility that comes with the skills. I'll finally just say, since I have a captive audience and then of a commercial, this sounds maybe a bit tough. On the very last slide, Mercer does have a really neat tool that does enable organizations to do this, our work redesign tool. So we're thankful for the opportunity to be presented with Eightfold today. And this particular tool does tie both into our own skills library as well as into tools like Eightfold and having that really good skills dialogue to go along with the work redesign dialogue. So that brings, I think, Andrea and I to our end today. Certainly, as Andrea said at the top of the call, there's an opportunity in the chat box to put up any other questions folks might have after listening to both the big trend data on what's going on, the skills that are increasing in importance, and how organizations can really both track those and develop those in a much more agile, effective way, and then how we can hopefully superpower the skills journey with some of those work redesign, the 4-step methodologies we talked about.
Andrea and David, thank you so much for such an incredible presentation that was very informative for our full viewing audience. We will, as we take questions from our listeners, the first question I have for you is, with the rise of gig and flexible work models, how can organizations ensure a seamless integration of both human talent and AI technologies?
I'm happy to jump in first on, and then Andrea, feel free to come along as well. You start to see that often, to me, it comes back to this idea of a talent bank. And I'll give an example. Some of way up in Alaska, I don't know if any folks here have been up that direction before, they have these neat things called native community corporations. And these would be organizations that are owned by the different native groups in the state of Alaska, but there'll be a fishery business, a road construction business, maybe a petrochemicals business. And so they'll have their full-time, say, truck drivers or cannery workers. But they also look across the wider, they call it their shareholder community, those who are part of that Native Alaskan community. And each of them are sharing a talent marketplace. And so the full-time folks who work for the trucking company or the fishing company, plus the 20, 30 other thousand other people in the community who have a construction skill or maybe who can drive a backhoe, they're in there as well. And so as that organization has a special, maybe big project in the summertime when it's good weather up in Alaska and we need to make some roads quickly, they don't just have their own full-time folks, but in that talent marketplace, they can reach out into the community and find folks with that skill set and with the availability. And so I think it really is these kind of mashups of technology that's brought together by the talent marketplace that enables some of this neat togetherness of full-time roles and gig type roles to work.
Yeah. I would just build on that really quickly. I think, as you were describing earlier, David, you talked about, removing the administrative task and allowing employees and workers to kind of really fulfill in some higher order activities. I think if you look at AI technologies, there's a lot of fear out there because it's the fear of the unknown and the fear that there's a new technology that's going to take over my job. And so if you really step back and understand AI technologies, what you'll understand is it's actually a very positive impact for workers, right? A little bit as David described, but even what enables. I gave some examples of empowering you in your career and giving you transparency on what do you need to build, what skills do you need to build to successfully move down different career paths. Enabling you with information, right? So that it's easily done and readily done, versus it's no longer who you know, it's more about what you know and what you can learn. So it's a very positive impact, I think. And so I think when you think about that change and making it seamless, just making sure to understand that impact and be able to articulate the positive side of it and the positive intention behind it, I think is really important to ensure kind of that smooth engagement and adoption.
And Andrea, of course, thank you so much for both acknowledging and validating that fear, while at the same time emphasizing the impact of really being able to augment the experiences that we're bringing into the workforce itself. So again, thank you so much to both of you for responding to the questions that came in during your presentation, as well as the one afterwards. As we prepare to close, I want to remind our HCI members, today's webcast has been approved for HRCI and SHRM credit, as well as for HCI recertification. Your credits for attending this webcast will soon show up in your My HCI profile under the transcript tab. While you're there, don't forget to check out hci.org for even more insights, as well as information on our certifications, virtual conferences, premium membership, and more. I'd like to say one more thank you to our presenters today and to the good people at Eightfold AI. And I'd like to also thank you, our webcast viewer. Thanks for spending an hour with us. We'll see you next time.